Good afternoon, everybody. It's David here at Tribal Habits, and we're ready to kick off another best practices session. So let's slowly get things here underway. I'm just going to set up a few more things at my end to make sure we're all good. There we go. Excellent. We've got a really practical session today where we're going to be looking at quizzes in online training. I think that's kind of a combination of both traditional quizzes, but also assessments or activities, basically where we're asking participants to do something in order to test their understanding or retention or something like that. And I'm going to run through three things today using a tribal habits topics. I'm going to look at what we can use quizzes for. I'm then going to look at some practical applications and in both parts about quizzes within tribal habits itself. And then finally, how to use assessments and offline activities. This is a large session. We have a reasonably large group here today. And so I do have my chat box open as well. Please feel free to ask questions as we're going and I'll get to them straight away. Let's get underway by talking about what we actually use quizzes for. And I think for many people, what I'm trying to do here is find something for you that's more inspirational than just using quizzes as some sort of a knowledge check at the end of a module. So let's start exploring a particular topic here. And we're going to look at 6 different ways to use quizzes in online learning, which I'm summarizing as engagement, calibration, understanding, reinforcement, recall, and demonstration. In all cases, there's some sort of an assessment or quiz or test. Let's begin with engagement. And actually, this is one of my favorite interactions. And if you've looked at modules I create, I often use this. So the idea here is that I'm going to use a quiz or a question to help teach. So there's no grading in this quiz or question. There's no right or wrong. And I use it in particular when I want to teach theory that would otherwise just be presented to the learner. So this is an alternative from simply giving them information. And the theory is quite straightforward. I ask them what they think the theory is. They then write an answer, and then I reveal what the theory is. So let's say I had a module which is going to be around traffic accidents, and I'm going to use traffic accidents as a theme through this point. And I want to go through the major causes of traffic accidents. I could just present that in a little interaction or a little video or something, just giving them the theory. But actually first I want to engage their mind and get them perhaps guessing what it is, thinking about what it is, so that when I reveal the answer, they're more invested in that reveal and what the answer is. So I'm asking them, what do you think are the fatal 5 causes of traffic accidents? So I might say it's speed, drinking, weather, old cars, and drugs. So I'm being forced as a learner to kind of engage with the content before I get the answer. And when I lock in my answer, the reveal is the theory. Okay, so if your answer included these 5 things, then you're on the right track. I actually don't care whether they got it right or wrong. The learning is the engagement. And now they're like, oh, I got that right. I got that right. Oh, I forgot about distraction and attention. So immediately they're just a bit more engaged in the content. And so there's a really easy quiz. And I use this a lot when I'm introducing new content as a way to do something other than just telling them the content. Let's now consider calibration. Calibration quizzes I used after I explain some theory where I feel that people might commonly get things wrong. So they misunderstand the theory that we're teaching, and I want to calibrate that to make sure they got it right. So I'm using a quiz kind of in situ here. It's not going to count towards their assessment or anything like that. It's a chance to check, are they understanding what I'm teaching? And so here I have a quiz. On multi-lane roads, if the posted speed limit is 90k or more, if the road is a keep left unless overtaking sign, you must not drive in the right-hand lane unless you are. Now, I probably just explained this in the section beforehand, and I'm just checking that they've understood everything correctly. And so I'll choose these 2 answers. I'm like, no, actually it was this one as well. And then I might even be reinforcing content in the feedback they get. So again, this is a quiz that's actually used for learning, but now it's just checking, did they fully kind of get the information that was provided to them? And so we're just kind of fine tuning. And this is related to an understanding quiz. Understanding quizzes are very similar. They're in situ quizzes that occur right after the theory, but it's not so much now about calibration. It's about, can they apply it? Can they take the knowledge that I've given them and apply it? And so I often use this quiz when the information that I've given them is very important and it's just critical that they can apply it well, or when I've given them some information that is foundation training and they're going to build upon that knowledge later. They're going to use that knowledge later. So getting it wrong now is a big problem. So in this case here, I've given them an image with two vehicles on it, and I probably covered this theory in the section right before it. And so this is just making sure they can apply it immediately. Can they follow those instructions immediately? In this case, I'm using a slightly different interaction. They kind of have to move these things around to get them in the right way. So I might submit that as the answer. I got it incorrect. So now I can see the correct answer. It's going to reverse it here for me to reinforce that. So calibration and understanding are quite similar in that I'm just checking that they fully understood, or I'm targeting known misunderstandings to make sure they're right before we go any further. Similarly, we can have reinforcement quizzes. This is the final sort of kind of in situ quiz which is about, do you understand? It's not part of an assessment. If you get it wrong, that's okay, because the lesson then is you got it wrong and you're learning. Reinforcement quizzes are quite similar. Typically, they are very simple quizzes. I'm literally just presenting information that I just gave them. So in this case here, I had a scenario insight in the previous section, which had some key information, and I'm literally just putting a quiz right below, repeating that information and making sure they click on the right answer. So this is more about just repeating information. And I'm big on that model where we might have a video that talks about something and then some insights that repeat key information in the video. Then in the next section, I might have a quiz that goes through that information again. And it doesn't matter if they see the same thing 3 times. This is important, and important information needs repetition. And I can't always assume that learners are going to get the information the first time I give it to them. So if I consider these 4 quizzes, none of them are to do with assessments, pass, fails, or anything. They're ways to use quizzes for learning. So either I'm using a quiz even before I've given them the information, and it doesn't have to be an open question like this. I could have used a multiple choice quiz here. I often do that when there's facts or figures. So I might be going to be talking about some statistics which reinforce the importance of the training, and I might get them to guess the statistic. You know, how many people do you think are caught speeding every year, and give them 5 options? And they'll usually guess the wrong one. The result is more startling than they thought. And that's a great way to engage them as we now start talking about speeding. And then calibration, understanding, and reinforcement are all dealing with knowledge that they've just received, where I'm fine-tuning, checking things, or reinforcing it. And so these are opportunities just to drop in quizzes along the way. The great thing about using quizzes here in situ as well is that they slow down the learning. They actually stop new content coming at the learner and give them a chance to absorb what they've already got before we move on. So there are also ways for you to create pauses in the content. And that's important for the load on your learners. I'm giving them a chance to absorb, hopefully transfer some information into working memory, into long-term memory, clear the working memory, and then engage with new content after that. So I may be presenting these quizzes at the end of a module or part of a module, or actually in the middle of it, just as a way to break down a really long point. Now, beyond that, we then have recall or understanding. So recall or understanding ones are the traditional assessments. So these are where we're going to use quizzes at the end of something. And this is like a test. So you have to do the next 6 questions and you have to get 6 out of 6, 5 out of 6, whatever it is. So this is the more classic part. And typically these assessments are graded quizzes, so something that can be marked by a computer. The important part here is that the separation of the assessment from the content. So we can't access the content just by scrolling back up and seeing it. We're going to have to do this as a separate thing. Here we'd use the Tribal Habits Assessment module that I'll talk about a little bit later, but essentially they finish exploring the content and they go to a new part of the module, which then has a series of quizzes for them to complete. So now they really have to remember information and then they have to apply it now without having just seen it. So a lot of it is about their ability to recall concepts and reapply them here. And that's what I'm using the assessment for. And so the recall part is very important. Another way then would be demonstration. This is different. This is using quizzes or more complex tasks for a learner to demonstrate application. And so this here is going beyond their ability to recall. In fact, recall may not be important at all. We might be happy with them revisiting content. Now we want to see them do something with it that is beyond scenarios and recall. So this could be a written assignment, a case study assessment, a video role play, something where they're showing their ability to implement, not just their ability to remember things. And we can use Tribal Habits activity modules, or as I'll show you in the next part, we could use the Q&A or upload elements in Tribal Habits for that. These last two here are more serious. They're more, and particularly demonstration is a very serious test of someone's abilities. Demonstration, though, can't be graded by a computer. It's too complex, so it will require a human to intervene and review the video that they submit or the file that they submit. So this needs to be warranted. Is the training that you're doing warranting that level of engagement from both the learner and yourself in doing that? Or are we happy with a simple recall where we're providing them with scenarios and they're choosing from a list of responses? Is that enough at that point? Or indeed, do we not even need recall? If our goal here is just to teach, to transfer information, then using the first four types of quizzes are perfect for that. They're great ways to use quizzes to teach, not just to test. Let's go through a few general do's and don'ts before I get into different types of actual quizzes and look at how we build them. So first of all, some best practices on the do side of things. So be really clear with your questions and answers. We don't want the learner struggling to understand the answer. We just want them focusing on which one of the answers is right. And the same with the questions. And I think that's where it's important to get some feedback or do some piloting on any quiz question to make sure it's really clear and that the questions and the answers aren't confusing to someone. Next, use all of the above answers really sparingly in multiple choice quizzes. So I'm not a huge fan of having a multiple choice quiz that has 3 things and then an all of the above. Almost every time I see one of those quizzes, the answer is all of the above. And learners know that too. It's not really a test for them. It's not really achieving anything. If you're going to use all of the above, it's got to be a really difficult choice. I actually prefer things where you maybe list 4 answers and then you might list 2 more, which says B and C or A and B, if you want to do it that way, and just have them enter in a single thing. So I generally steer clear of all of the above. I'd even prefer, if every answer is correct, you don't put all of the above and you force them to actually select every answer and hesitate as they select every one. Next, make sure you differentiate between understanding and recall requirements in quizzes. And I'll talk more about this in the don't. I don't like using recall in quizzes unless someone actually really needs to recall that fact on the spot later. Asking someone what act covers this thing in a compliance training, I don't think it's a very good question because on the job, they don't care about what act covers it. So anything where I'm asking them to recall facts really has to be facts that they genuinely need to know on the spot. So I usually see a lot of recall stuff around rules, like on traffic or on product or technical knowledge, but nothing else. Finally, I generally recommend you limit yourself to 2 to 4 quizzes per section within a single point. If you have 10 quizzes you want someone to do, I would break it up just to reduce load. What you don't want to do is have someone open a new section and see 10 quizzes in a row. They're like, ugh. And they tend to rush. It can be a bit disengaging. Just break them into, lots of 3 or something. They complete 3, then they get a button which takes them to the next group of 3 quizzes. Still 10 quizzes, but we're just making the load on them feel a little bit easier. And so they don't feel overwhelmed when they see those 10 quizzes immediately. On the don't side of things, don't try to trick people. The test should be providing the right answer, not deciphering your question. I don't like questions that are tricky. So if you're going to do something like, which of the following is not blah, 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 then I would underline the word not. Or if you want someone to answer something in particular, bold it in the question. Don't make it a trick on did they read the question properly. Avoid giving silly choices in multiple choice quizzes. My favorite one of that was in my grade 8 earth science exam, where I had a multiple choice quiz at school, which was about why fossils can be found on the top of mountains. And one of the answers was because the devil put them there. Obviously not the right answer. And it was so obvious. It was just like, well, it's obviously the other answer. It's like a pointless experience. So I think every answer in a quiz should give pause for thinking. Every answer should be plausible, should be possible. Else, what's the point? If it's so obvious what the right answer is, it's not achieving any of the objectives that you're looking for. I've mentioned already not using recall quizzes that would never actually be recalled. And then also don't overload people with quizzes. Every quiz you put into a module creates load, effort on the learner. And we need to be how much effort we put in. The more effort we put in with quizzes, the more we push the quizzes onto them, we're kind of using up energy, we're using up horsepower, which takes away from their ability to then absorb new content. So just a few quizzes to reinforce stuff and then move on to new content, that's perfect because you're giving them a chance to absorb stuff. It's not too much load. But if there's 10 quizzes at the end of every point, I would expect them then to take a break at the end of every point and just go recharge. 10 quizzes is a lot. So just remember, quizzes create load and we're looking for that balance. Let's move on. I'm going to look at now some specific types of quizzes and how we build them to achieve those kind of 6 or 7 outcomes that we're looking for with quizzes in the first part. So let's move on to fact 2. And I'm going to look at quizzes in Tribal Habits, but to be honest, this could work in most e-learning authoring tools. And I'm going to start with simple quizzes. So some simple true-false quizzes here are totally fine. I actually don't mind true-false quizzes, particularly if I'm using them to reinforce recent information and get the true-false right. So I can just submit it, see the right answer and get some feedback. That's fine. Alternatively, in Tribal Habits, you can set up correct and incorrect feedback. So in this case here, I'll choose the wrong answer. That's incorrect. And I'm getting different feedback this time, which explains why my choice is wrong. So I like doing that in true-false quizzes or in any sort of quiz about reinforcement. Particularly when I'm calibrating something, I want to give them, if they get it wrong, I might want to give them some particular feedback to anyone who got it wrong to help fix that thought in their head. If I know, probably as the facilitator, I know they're choosing that answer because they think the following, then let's tell them that in the feedback and give them that little bit of feedback. And so if I just jump into creator mode in this particular topic and I find that quiz, which is here, and open the quiz, I've got this option here to show different feedback for correct and incorrect submissions. So the correct feedback is this, and then the incorrect feedback is that. And that allows me then to give them that little bit of hinting or teaching as they're going. Let's make the quizzes slightly more complex now. So here I'm going to look at a multiple choice, multiple answer quiz. So it has many answers and the explorer is not restricted to how many they answer. So this case here, it has 3 correct answers out of 5, and we're not telling them how many are correct. So in this case here, they've really got to think it through. They really won't know here when they submit. Now I can change that. I can go into this quiz. So I'm just switching to creator mode. Here's that quiz. And there is an option down the bottom which says explorers must select 3 answers. Now that 3 will change to however many is correct. If I click this option and hit save and go back and reload that particular quiz, it's now going to say at the top, select 3, and it's going to say select 3 answers. So in this case here, I'd probably change the question to say select the 3 correct answers. So I can even give them a hint, 3 of them are right, and then force the submission of 3 until they submit. Or I can just say select all the correct ones and not give them that, which is clearly a much harder one because they've really got no idea how many are right or wrong. So in this case here, I'm going to select that, and I got them wrong. I'm being shown which ones were right. I can make this even harder if I wanted to, if I really want to reinforce things by forcing them to get it correct. So in this quiz here, they can select as many as they want. They have no idea how many are correct, but the quiz has an option which says if they get it wrong, try again. And so here, if I do the same thing and submit it, I'm just being told I got it wrong. I'm being given a hint, which you can put in, and then I have to try again. Now, if you weren't telling them how many were right, this is quite a hard quiz for someone. They've really got to pay attention now. They've got to perhaps work through some things, learning as they're getting it wrong until they get that right one. Now they're right and can move on. And the platform will prevent them from moving on until they get it right. Now, that's a very high threshold. They don't know how many answers are correct. They're going to have to keep going until they've got it right. So that's great when your threshold requires that, when you want to be that tough with them because it's important content. So use that one with a bit of discretion. Finally, we can also put images in quizzes, obviously, just to state that. And your images could be an image of something where you have designed it with 4 options, and then you put the options down below. So it might have 4 images here in the one image, and they choose the correct one or the incorrect one. This is obviously an ambulance, so I'm all good there. Next up, we have some ungraded questions. So ungraded questions can't be marked by a computer because they're too complex. And we looked at them earlier. In Tribal Habits, these are called Q&A. And this is where you ask a question and the learner provides an answer, and then they see your feedback. It doesn't matter at this point if they get it right or wrong, because the answer is too complex for the computer to grade. A human, though, could grade it later on, though. So this is a good way to do kind of assessor questions, where someone's providing a long answer, which an assessor is going to review later and grade. So is this a question? I might say, yes, that is a question, or whatever my answer is going to be. I lock in my answer and then I get a response. I see this. And it could be as simple as thanks, an assessor will review your answer. Or it could be like I did earlier, thanks, your answer should have been the following. If we don't care whether it's right or wrong, if we just want them to compare right or wrong themselves and do that as a learning experience. You can also copy answers and questions to journal. And that might be my answer here, and that is correct. So in this case here, it has taken the question and their answer and copied it to their journal. So if I open my journal up here, I will see there it is, the question and the answer copied to the journal. And since you can have everyone's journal and topics sent to stakeholders, at the end of the topic, I could have the journal emailed to an assessor for an assessor to review offline, review in their email, and then contact the person if they've got any feedback about their answer or question. So a couple of different ways here for assessors to jump in and deal with these sort of things. The match interaction we saw earlier is a kind of ranking sorting interaction. And you can do a couple of different things with this. You can put things in order. So here on the left-hand column, I have the steps, and they can just be called step 1, step 2, step 3. That's all they need to be. And then I'll explain what the steps are briefly on the right-hand side, and the learner needs to move things around to get them in the right order. So here I probably want to eat first, then brush my teeth, then go to bed. Yes, that is correct. So that's a good way to test step by step. They can also match things. So you could be matching definitions here. So in this case here, definition A for word A and acronym B is an explanation of acronyms. So you have a series of acronyms and what they are, or definitions. And also responses. I quite like this one as well. Here I might have 4 scenarios and then 4 responses, and they have to put them right, get them in the right order. Let's say that's the right one there. I think that's the right response to each of these scenarios. Submit my answer. This one's incorrect. And so now it's going to show them the correct answer. And I think that movement of locking things in makes them kind of now reread through and kind of have a learning experience there as well. So match is very good for a lot of different types of interactions there. Next, we have a couple of other ungraded interactions that people often don't think of. So I'm going to use the flip card interaction here as a quiz. It's an ungraded quiz. There's no right or wrong. So this is a good learning interaction, which I might do to teach someone some things. And so in this case here, let's say I'm outlining a response up here, a scenario up here. I could have put the scenario in a text element or something beforehand, or outlined it here. And then I'm giving them 3 flip cards to flick on as to which one they think is correct. It's ungraded, so it's not going to matter whether it's right or wrong. It's a learning experience. So if they go, oh, is it this one? That's not correct, and they get some feedback. Naturally now, they're going to start to click on other ones to figure out which one is correct. Turns out it's this one here. So I like these flip cards as a way to do a kind of low load, nicely interactive quiz, but also one where they can check out a bunch of ideas and learn why each is right or wrong. So this is a great learning interaction that uses quizzes. We've had a lot of success with the button interaction in a similar way. So the button interaction, on the first button, you put the scenario or question, because that button's always visible. So imagine here, it says review the scenario, then select your next action. So I have a scenario outlined here, and then I have 3 choices. They can choose what their next action is. Again, this is ungraded, so it's okay if they get things wrong. They might say, well, I think I should wait. Hey, that's correct. They got it right. And naturally, they might want to check out what the other ones are too to see why those things are right or wrong. So both of these here, I think, are nice ways to have really nice interactive quizzes, which are ungraded and allow people to learn as they're going. If you want to do something really complex, you can also use the upload and download elements for someone to submit something very complex. So the download element allows explorers or learners to download something. And so you might provide them with a case study or a template for a written assessment. So that's kind of like part one, they download this. Part two asks them to upload something. And that's where they might be re-uploading their completed written assessment, their response to a case study. Or maybe you just have some explanation which says, please record yourself doing something or take a photo of something or prepare something, and they can upload it here for review by an assessor. So this does require human interaction, but it's a good way to do something very complex or where you need a real demonstration of technique from someone. Hopefully there, for all the Tribal Habits people with us today, I've given you a lot of inspiration with a wide variety of elements. Everything you've seen here, I've just created over here in Creator, just using all the existing elements we've got. And they're all ways to kind of test someone's knowledge, recall something, gather information from them, or just have a better learning experience using quizzes. I'm going to wrap up today just by looking then at the more formal sorts of quizzes that we can use. And the first one is an assessment. So let me just talk briefly about assessments. So assessments tend to happen at the end of a topic where you want to have some sort of graded process. And the way it works is you enable the assessment module in your topic. And then in the settings, you say how many quizzes you want, and then what's the pass mark, and how many retakes someone is allowed. So if I just switch over to this topic here and go to the settings tab and manage navigation, I have the assessment module enabled, it is on. And if I click the edit button, it shows me the settings for it. And so I would like 3 questions to be asked. The minimum pass mark is 2, and they can have 3 retakes. And I'm being told that I have created 6 questions for this assessment. So essentially there's 6 questions in the pool. And the way our assessment module works is it will pick 3 of the 6 questions at random and put them in a random order for each person each time. So there's an automatic randomization going. You obviously need to have 3 quizzes for the assessment to work. In this case, that's the minimum. But if you have more, we use them as a question pool. You create your quizzes for assessments in Tribal Habits wherever you want to. So you don't go to a separate part just to create quizzes just for the assessment. You create your quizzes anywhere in the module at all. And the advantage of that is that you can create your quiz right beside the content it relates to. And that's, I think, really good for creators because you're often looking at your content thinking, what's a good quiz question I could ask about that? And when you think about it, you add your quiz right there while the content's right beside it, which makes writing the content really easy. And then down the bottom, it will ask you where you want to show this quiz. You can either show the quiz in this position here where you've created it, so it'll happen right there, or no, just in the assessment, in which case the quiz will be visible to you as a creator in that spot, but we'll hide it from the learners at that spot and we'll just use it in the assessment, or both, which means you can use a quiz twice. Once when they're going through as a way to calibrate or understand, but then ask it again over in the blind assessment. I think this not only makes it really easy to create your quizzes and get inspiration, it makes it easy to audit your quizzes. So later on, if you're having a problem with a quiz, people aren't understanding it, when you're looking at the quiz, the content it relates to will be right beside it. So it's really obvious if there's something wrong in one of the answers, if one of the answers is just incorrect, or to kind of revisit and figure out why it's going on. The ability to reuse quizzes too means you can get a lot of value out of creating one quiz. The other thing you can do is use activities. So activities are a dedicated interaction in Tribal Habits. They come after any assessment, and they essentially are a task you want someone to complete. So the way activities work is, once again, you go and enable them and you say, here are the instructions of what I want you to do. And that could be take a video of yourself doing something, or complete this case study, have an assessment, have a meeting with someone, go role play, whatever it is you want them to do as the assessment. You can also give them a file to use in the activity if you wanted to, like a template. You can ask them to upload a file. You can give them a due date for each activity, like you have to do this within the next 3 days or 7 days, and then you can put on notifications around that to remind them. You capture completion data and you capture a written response. And when they start the activity instructions are emailed to them, and you can have any involved stakeholder email the instructions as well. So if the activity is go and meet with someone to do a role play with them, you could tag their manager or sales assessor or whoever it is on that activity so everyone knows it's ready to do that. So over in Tribal Habits, back on the settings menu under Manage Navigation, there's the assessment turned on. And I've got one activity here, but I can click New here to add more activities. If I look at activity 1, it's Analyze a Case Study. Again, if I bring up the settings, it's called Analyze a Case Study. I then have a series of instructions here that ask them to download some case study information, complete the long answer questions and upload it. I could then click here to add a file to give them the case study template. I'm giving them 7 days to do it and allocating 60 minutes of training time. And when they come back, they have to upload a file and answer this question. And so this is then a graded assessment, a non-graded assessment. You're going to need a facilitator or an assessor to look at it. But it's a great way to schedule up very complex bits of assessment at the end, and really where you're driving behavioral change or a demonstration of technique or application at the end. And on that note, our 30 minutes and your lunch hour has passed in a flash. I'm going to hang around and answer any questions you've got. You can ask them in chat or Q&A. Otherwise, thanks so much for coming along today. We have best practices webinars really often. So please go to tribalhabits.com to sign up for the next one. Thanks again for coming. So let's go through some questions that we've got. Cleo's asked me a question that I'm just reading through. Yeah, you're right at the moment, Cleo. We don't capture their historical got wrong, but that's actually on the development roadmap to fix. So at the moment, we're just capturing the most recent answer, but we do want to capture all answers. So Cleo, you'll have that information probably in about 8 to 10 weeks from now. We're rolling that out. Thanks, Erica. And Jeff, thanks so much for that feedback. Yep, cheers, Cleo. Yeah, I got a question about assessors. We do have a new role coming actually called assessors in about 6 to 8 weeks from now as well. An assessor will be like a mini creator. They'll be able to go into a topic and review submissions by learners on things like upload or Q&A and activities, those really complex things, but they won't be able to edit the topic itself. So they're like a mini creator. So that'll be really good where you do have those more complex modules and you want people to be able to review information, but not actually edit the topic themselves. So that's a new assessor role coming soon. Yep, I got a question about data. So in the admin area of Tribal Habits, you can review all submissions to everything. So for quizzes, you can search for all quizzes, and we have an analytics tab that gets into detail about that. So you can be searching for quizzes within an individual topic or across all topics by key phrases of the question or the answer, by certain teams to kind of see how people are responding. Same with Q&A. You can go through responses based on keyword, key phrase, by certain demographics or certain topics. We don't expose uploads in the admin area. Uploads are only visible over in Creator, but we are going to change that quite soon actually. So admins will be able to review all of those uploaded files as well. Yeah, so I've got a question here from Steve about hotspot. Yes, we're going to do a hotspot quiz. It's already mocked up, ready to go. It's just in the queue to get addressed. I think it probably is in the 10 to 12 week stage at this point, looking at the development roadmap. It's essentially going to allow you to put an image up and have people click on the image and get right or wrong feedback based on that. So an example might be you might have a photo of a health and safety scene and they have to click on what's right or wrong in it. So click on all the things that are right or wrong, or a bit of software and they have to click on which button does the following thing. So the image will be the quiz and they'll click on it. And that will essentially repurpose the existing hotspot element, but add a graded part to which part of the hotspot they click on. Cool. I'm running out of questions, so I think we're pretty good at this stage. If you're like me, you're probably thinking hard about lunch if you didn't eat it while we were going. So I'll wrap up at this point and say thanks to everyone for coming along and hope to see you on another best practices session soon. Have a great day.